The last piece to this unit is dealing with the quadratic formula. All right, so now most people, when given the choice, choose to use quadratic formula because the quadratic formula is given to you and you simply have to be able to plug numbers into it and then use your calculator correctly to get the answer. All right, I personally like completing the square better, but that's because I just think completing the square has less issues with dealing with it, and I also know the steps. If you don't know the steps for completing the square, it's impossible, and you should use the quadratic formula. All right, so the quadratic formula is right there. Negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac underneath a radical all over 2a. All right, you do get that formula, so you don't have to memorize it. When I was in school, we had to memorize it. Not that you should have to because of that, but you have to make sure it's equal to 0, okay, before you can use this thing. That's probably the biggest mistake people make that get okay at this. They don't get it equal to 0. All right, the a is in front of the x squared, the b is in front of the x, the c is the number by itself. They can be negative, so we have to pay attention to it. All right, it's going to find roots, it's going to find imaginary things, it's going to find everything. All right, and it's an alternative to completing the square. All right, so the steps are pretty simple. Let's get it equal to 0, write down a, b, and c, plug them into the formula, and then simplify. Okay, but the simplify piece, this piece right here, has stuff going on. All right, you cannot just type this all into the calculator because it won't do it for you. All right, it's got a radical, it's got a plus and a minus. It might have imaginary numbers, so we have to break it down in pieces. All right, and then we have to make sure that we simplify the radical, get rid of any negatives under the square root, and deal with that also. Okay, so we have to make sure we take our time. It looks like it's easier because the steps are easier. I don't think at the end of the day it's any easier than completing this square, aside from the fact you don't have to memorize the formula, and for completing the square, you do have to memorize the steps.